It began on a night so still that even the cosmos seemed to be holding its breath. The citadel, usually alive with the faint hum of countless portals and versions of existence, had gone quiet. Somewhere, deep within the soft, mechanical heart of a forgotten laboratory, Rick sat at his workbench, a dim blue light trembling over his hands. For the first time in forever, the stars outside weren't shining. They hadn't vanished. They'd simply stopped remembering how. Tiny pinpricks of once-burning light hung like faded memories in the void, waiting to remember who they were. Morty noticed it first.
Rick? Is it just me, or is space off tonight?
Rick didn't look up. He was holding a small device, something between a flask, a compass, and a heartbeat, and its faint pulse was slowing down. "Stars don't just go out, Morty," he muttered.
They get tired. Morty frowned, rubbing his eyes.
"Tired of what?" Rick's voice grew softer, almost human. Being stars, I guess. There was no adventure that night. No portals flaring open, no explosions echoing across galaxies. Just a strange, heavy quiet, the kind that presses on the chest like a dream you can't wake from. Rick stepped outside, his lab coat catching the thin silver of a dying moon. Morty followed, half asleep, clutching his hoodie tight against the cosmic wind. The citadel looked different when the stars went dark, more fragile, almost beautiful. It was a city of ghosts suspended in ink. Every building glowed faintly like a memory refusing to fade. Rick leaned against the railing, flask in hand. "You ever wonder, Morty, if all this
ever gets tired of us too?"
Morty shrugged. "You mean like
the universe?"
Rick nodded faintly. "Yeah, like maybe it's had enough stories for one lifetime." They stood there for a while. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was gentle. A shared kind of stillness, the kind that doesn't demand anything but presence. Morty tilted his head.
"So, what happens when infinity gets tired, Rick?"
Rick exhaled, the faintest laugh leaving his lips. "It rests, Morty. Even infinity's got to close its eyes sometime." From the edge of space, a faint hum began to echo, a low vibration, almost like breathing. Rick squinted toward the horizon where the light once shimmered. The stars were flickering now, not dying, but dreaming. Each one pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Morty whispered, "It's like they're
asleep." "Yeah," Rick murmured. "Everything sleeps eventually." For the first time in countless adventures, Rick didn't rush to fix it.
He didn't scramble for a tool or theory. He just stood there, eyes reflecting the faint blue of the sleeping stars. There was something in his expression, something Morty couldn't name.
Not sadness, not fear, just
stillness. The wind moved softly across the citadel, carrying the faint sound of static, like the memory of 1,000 other Ricks whispering from other universes, their voices fading into calm. Morty leaned on the rail beside him.
"Do you think they dream, Rick?"
"The stars, I mean?" Rick hesitated, then chuckled quietly. "If they don't, they're missing out." A soft, metallic whir came from Rick's device, the pulse stabilizing, syncing with the rhythm of the stars outside. He tapped it gently, but this time not to fix it, just to listen. The sound reminded Morty of something. A heartbeat, maybe, or the quiet ticking of time before falling asleep. Rick took a sip from his flask. "You know, Morty, I used to think the universe was just a big dumb engine. All math and mechanics." Morty smiled sleepily. "And now?" Rick glanced at the stars again. "Now I think maybe it's a story trying to rest." They stood together under that hushed sky. The stars blinked faintly, as though remembering themselves one by one. Each small flicker carried warmth, the kind that reaches the bones but doesn't burn. Morty yawned.
"Kinda peaceful, huh?"
Rick nodded. "Don't get used to it." But the way he said it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a wish. In the far distance, the citadel lights dimmed one sector at a time. Portals closed like sleepy eyes. The hum of infinity slowed, as if the entire multiverse had finally exhaled. Rick turned back toward the lab. "Come on, Morty, if the stars are sleeping, we might as well let them rest." Morty followed, dragging his feet, his voice softer now. "Hey, Rick!"
Yeah? Do you ever?
"Wish you could just stop fixing everything?" Rick paused in the doorway. The shadows of the lab stretched out before him like memories he wasn't ready to face. He looked back at the dark sky and said, almost too quietly, "Every night, Morty, every damn night." The door slid shut behind them, sealing the silence in. For a long time, only the sound of tools and faint static filled the room. Not the sound of work, but of thought. Rick sat at the bench and opened his old notebook, the one he hadn't touched in years. On the first page was a formula. On the second, a crude drawing of a little boy with wild hair holding a hand too large for his own. Someone had scrawled above it, "Don't forget to rest." Rick's hand hovered over the drawing. Then, for reasons even he didn't understand, he smiled. Outside, a single star blinked awake, faint, golden, patient. Morty had fallen asleep on the couch, head resting on a pile of blueprints. Rick whispered, "Guess I'll fix it tomorrow." And for the first time in his infinite life,
He meant it. The night after the stars forgot their names.
the air in Rick's garage felt heavier than usual. Not with danger, but with memory. The hum of the machines had softened into something almost like a lullaby, a slow and constant rhythm that filled the space between thought and sleep. Morty sat curled up on the old couch, his eyes half closed, the glow of a half-repaired portal gun painting the room in soft green and gold. Rick stood at the workbench, hands still, staring at the device as if it might start whispering secrets at any moment. The first portal had always been a story he told himself differently each time. Sometimes it was an accident, a drunken spark of genius, a collision of loneliness and mathematics. Sometimes it was destiny, like the universe had opened its veins just to see what he'd do. But tonight, as the machine sputtered and flickered, it felt like something gentler. Like it had always been less about escaping and more about searching for somewhere that felt like home. Morty's voice drifted softly through the air. "Hey, Rick, do you ever dream about the first time you made one of those things?" Rick didn't look up.
I don't dream, Morty. Dreams are just reruns for the emotionally repressed. Morty smiled faintly.
Already knowing that meant yes. The portal gun trembled on the workbench, casting fleeting shapes across the walls. Green ripples bending through smoke, reflecting fragments of places they'd been. A castle under glass skies, a planet made of mirrors, the couch where they'd once slept after too many late-night adventures. Each image flickered for a second and then melted into the next, blending together like fragments of an old song playing from a distance. Rick adjusted a dial. The machine pulsed brighter.
Huh, he murmured, his voice oddly soft. It's leaking, Morty sat up.
Leaking what?
Memories, Rick said simply. From the barrel of the gun, faint streams of light began to flow like mist, rising and twisting through the air.
Inside them, shapes formed, moments maybe.
Rick squinting into a burning sky,
Morty laughing through tears. A younger Rick, holding a prototype in both hands, muttering something about changing everything forever. The light drifted toward the ceiling, pooling like clouds that forgot how to rain. The reflections shimmered against the lab walls. Infinite versions of themselves, looping through time, always leaving and never quite arriving. Morty watched quietly. "Is beautiful, Rick?" Rick sighed.
It's a mess.
Beautiful's just what you call something that hurts too much to fix. Morty frowned, rubbing his arms. "Do you think it remembers us? The portal, I mean. All the places we've been?" Rick glanced up at the glowing mist. "Every atom remembers, Morty. That's what makes it unbearable." The light dimmed, settling into a calm rhythm. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and dust, like an old book left open for too long. Morty's eyelids grew heavy as he lay back, the soft hum of energy washing over him. He wasn't sure if he was awake anymore. The room seemed to tilt gently, like a cradle rocking between universes. He saw flashes behind his eyes, a small blue planet, a younger Rick with steadier hands, a warm laugh he couldn't place. In one of the dreams, he wasn't Morty at all. He was just watching from somewhere safe as light bent into circles and a man reached through them, searching. Rick noticed Morty drifting. He almost said something sharp to wake him, but stopped. The boy looked peaceful, something Rick hadn't seen in a long time. So instead, he turned back to the portal gun, adjusting the focus just slightly. The mist flickered again, and this time, Rick saw something too. Not another universe, not another version of himself. Just a simple image. A kitchen table, a half-eaten sandwich, laughter. Something domestic, warm. For a moment, it felt like being alive in the middle of an ordinary day, untouched by science or sorrow. He blinked, and the vision dissolved. Rick leaned on the workbench, hands trembling slightly.
Huh, he whispered.
Guess even portals have ghosts. The sound of a soft snore pulled him back. Morty was asleep, mouth open, head tilted against the armrest. The glow of the portal mist painted his face in gentle greens, like the light of an underwater dream. Rick stared for a long time, the corners of his mouth twitching into something almost like a smile. He shut off the device. The mist lingered for a moment before fading into quiet air. For the first time in years, the lab felt empty in a comforting way, as if the silence itself was keeping watch. Rick sat beside Morty on the couch, picking up a discarded blueprint. It was one of Morty's, a childish drawing of a happy universe with stars that smiled and a little stick figure of Rick holding a wrench. "Cute," Rick murmured, setting it down again. His voice cracked slightly as he added, "Naive, but cute." He leaned back, closing his eyes for just a second. Only a second, he told himself. The hum of machines faded into the rhythm of his breathing, and for that brief stretch of stillness, he wasn't the smartest man in the multiverse, or the most broken. He was just a person sitting in a quiet room, beside someone who still believed he could fix things that weren't entirely broken. Outside the lab, the stars flickered faintly, one by one, remembering their names again. Their light spilled through the windows, tracing the outlines of the tools and bottles and old memories stacked high. Somewhere in the distance, a faint sound echoed, a ripple through the void, like the laughter of worlds that once were. Rick opened one eye and watched the stars. "Welcome back," he said softly. He took one last look at the portal gun, now silent on the workbench, its light dimmed to a steady pulse, like a heartbeat settling after a long run. For the first time, Rick didn't reach for it. Instead, he closed his eyes, letting the hum of the universe fade into something quieter. Something that felt almost like peace. And in that silence, the first portal dreamed again. The morning didn't come so much as it drifted in. A slow, silver light seeped through the blinds of Rick's garage, turning the smoke from half-finished experiments into pale ribbons that curled lazily toward the ceiling. Nothing buzzed or clanked the way it usually did. The air was still, thick with a kind of silence that felt like it had weight. Morty stirred first. He blinked awake, still half dreaming, his mind tangled in the residue of whatever strange dream the portal mist had left behind. For a moment he couldn't tell if he was in their garage or somewhere between universes, or the light looked too soft, too quiet, too gentle for reality. "Rick?" he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Rick didn't answer. He was sitting at the workbench, staring at something small resting in his palm. A metallic fragment, faintly glowing with the same soft hue as the portal light from the night before. It wasn't much, just a piece of an old prototype, but Rick looked at it the way someone looks at an old photograph. Not for what it shows, but for everything it refuses to say. Morty sat up slowly, wrapping a blanket around himself.
You didn't sleep, huh?
Rick snorted.
Sleep's just a slower way to die, Morty. I prefer the fast track, Morty smiled weakly.
He knew Rick said things like that to hide the parts of him that were still human, the parts that still ached. He looked around the garage. It felt different today. Not haunted exactly, but inhabited. Like the air itself remembered too much. On the shelves, old inventions sat like fossils. Devices that once saved universes now collected dust beside empty bottles and tools that hadn't been touched in years. Morty noticed the faint outlines of burn marks on the floor. Circles of old portals that had long since closed. Each one felt like a doorway to a memory they could never re-enter. Rick set the fragment down and muttered, "You know what's funny, Morty?
Every time you open a portal, you're not really traveling. You're just skipping through the ghosts of your own possibilities," Morty frowned. That's kind of depressing, Rick. Reality is depressing, Morty, Rick replied, his voice low but not sharp this time.
Depressing and repetitive, like reruns with better graphics. He stood up and shuffled toward a shelf, brushing dust off a cracked monitor. On its surface, a faint reflection shimmered. A version of him that looked a little younger, maybe even a little kinder. Rick watched it for a long time before turning the screen face down. Morty hesitated, then said quietly, "You ever wish you could go back to before all the portals and universes and—"
Everything?
Rick's laugh was a dry exhale. Back to what, Morty? A time when I thought being smart would save me? When I believed in something? He picked up a wrench and turned it in his hands. There's no back.
There's only forward.
And sometimes, if you're unlucky, sideways. The hum of the machines stirred again. A low, sleepy vibration that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Morty watched a faint shimmer of light pass across the garage. Not from the portal gun, but from something else. It moved like a memory walking across the room. "Rick," Morty said softly, "the light."
It's doing it again. Rick looked up.
The shimmer thickened, bending the air like heat over asphalt. Shapes began to form. Outlines of figures, flickering, soft, almost translucent. They looked like versions of Rick and Morty, standing in the same room, but different. A dozen ghostly reflections repeating the same motions. Tinkering, laughing, arguing, breaking, repairing. Morty gasped.
Are those?
"Yeah," Rick said quietly.
Echoes. He didn't move.
He just watched as the reflections played out around them. One version of Rick was laughing wild and young, holding up a new invention like it was the key to everything. Another was slumped on the floor, hands shaking, muttering equations to no one. Another was hugging Morty, saying, "Don't tell anyone I did that." Morty's voice trembled.
Are they us?
Rick shrugged, eyes fixed on the spectral scene. Could be some other dimension bleeding through. Could just be the garage remembering. The figures shimmered, looping endlessly, moments without beginnings or ends. The air buzzed faintly with their echoes. It wasn't frightening, though. It was melancholy, the kind of sadness that doesn't demand tears, just quiet acknowledgement. Morty took a small step forward, reaching toward one of the flickering figures, a younger version of himself looking up at Rick with pure admiration. The light passed right through his fingers, leaving behind a faint warmth. "It's like they're still here," he whispered. Rick exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "They're not here, Morty. They're everywhere."
That's the problem with existing in infinite versions. None of them ever really go away. Morty's gaze drifted across the room. See, every time we change something, every time we leave a world behind, it keeps spinning without us, Rick finished.
Ghosts in motion, they stood in silence. The echoes shimmered for a while longer before slowly dissolving, their light thinning into dust. The garage fell still again, except for the faint hum of electricity and Morty's breathing. Rick turned away first. "Grab your stuff, Morty. We've got places to not haunt." Morty didn't move.
Rick, maybe it's okay that they're still there.
Maybe that's what makes everything kind of beautiful? Rick paused at the door. His back stayed turned. Beauty's just entropy with good lighting. But when he spoke again, his voice softened, barely audible.
Still, yeah, maybe. He picked up the portal gun and powered it on.
The familiar green light flared, but softer this time. Dimmer, almost gentle. For a moment, it looked like the shimmering light from before. Not a gateway, but a memory opening up again. Morty approached, still wrapped in his blanket, eyes sleepy. "Where we going, Rick?" Rick stared into the swirling green surface. "Not sure, Morty. Maybe somewhere we haven't ruined yet." The portal shimmered, its edges pulsing in time with their breaths. The garage lights flickered once, as if saying goodbye, and then went out. The only thing left glowing was the faint reflection of the two of them, side by side, standing on the threshold of something vast and quiet. They stepped through. The moment they vanished, the garage returned to its silence. But if one listened closely, past the hum of old machines, past the faint creak of settling metal, there was a whisper. Not a voice exactly, but a resonance. A soft echo of laughter maybe, or the sound of a wrench hitting the floor. Ghosts, yes. But peaceful ones, and for the first time in a long time, Rick's garage didn't feel haunted at all. It felt like it was resting. The portal opened like a sigh. Soft blue light spilled across the surface of an alien meadow. Not harsh or swirling, but calm, like moonlight caught in glass. The wind here didn't move fast, it glided. Every blade of grass shimmered faintly, and every drop of dew seemed to contain its own tiny reflection of the sky. Rick and Morty stepped through the portal slowly, as if afraid to disturb the quiet. The world around them stretched out in silence. A valley filled with smooth, rippling plains of what looked like glass, but wasn't. When Morty bent down and touched it, it shifted beneath his fingers, cool and liquid, yet solid enough to hold his reflection perfectly still. "Whoa," Morty breathed.
"It's like a mirror, but it's alive." Rick took a long drag from his flask, squinting at the horizon.
Planet 7ZK, locals call it the still mirror. Whole place reflects more than just your face. It shows you what you were supposed to become if things had gone right.
"Not that that's ever happened for me," Morty frowned. "What does that mean, like alternate versions of us?"
Rick shrugged. "Nah, alternate potentials. All the stuff you missed out on because you were too human to follow through." The wind moved across the fields like a slow tide, and with it came faint whispers. Fragments of laughter, sighs, echoes of choices never made. Morty watched his reflection ripple in the mirror grass, but something about it made him hesitate. "Rick,"
"My reflections."
smiling. Rick grunted, not looking up from his tools. "So? But I'm not smiling," Morty said quietly.
"And he looks older? Like he's happy or something?" Rick glanced down, eyes narrowed.
Sure enough, Morty's reflection wasn't mimicking his movements. It was independent.
Older, calmer, sitting cross-legged with an open book in his lap.
He looked content, peaceful, like he'd already lived his life and found a place to rest in it. Morty stepped closer to the mirror field, and the older reflection looked up. For a second, their eyes met through the thin layer of shimmering surface, and something deep inside Morty's chest trembled. "What's happening?" he whispered. Rick's voice was quieter now. "The planet's not showing you a different version of yourself, Morty. It's showing you the version you could have been if you'd stopped running." Morty swallowed hard. "Stopped running from what?"
"Everything." Rick turned back to the mirror plane.
His own reflection waited there, But unlike Morty's, it didn't move right away. When it finally did, it smiled. Not a sarcastic grin, not that usual bitter smirk. Just a small, tired, genuine smile. A smile that looked like forgiveness. Rick froze. His breath caught in his throat, and the flask slipped from his hand, landing softly on the glassy surface with a dull clink. Morty turned to him. "Rick, you okay?" Rick didn't answer. He stared into his reflection's eyes like he was staring into another lifetime. The reflection reached up and placed a hand on the glass, as if offering something wordless. Not pity, not blame, just understanding. "I don't like this place," Rick muttered, voice cracking slightly. "It's too quiet." Morty knelt beside him, watching the reflection with him.
That's kind of the point, isn't it? Like, he's trying to show us what we could have been if we'd slowed down. Rick barked a bitter laugh.
Slowing down's for people who can afford to. But even as he said it, his reflection didn't move away. It just stood there, eyes soft, patient, almost waiting for him to stop fighting. Morty's reflection had now closed his book and was looking toward the horizon, where the mirrored plains met a mountain of shifting light. He gestured for Morty to follow, though no sound passed between them. Morty stood up, hesitant. "He wants me to go over there." Rick waved a hand dismissively. "Yeah, well, your inner Buddha can wait, Morty. We're not sticking around for spiritual therapy." But Morty was already walking, slowly, deliberately, across the glass. His reflection matched his pace, a step ahead, leading him toward the glowing ridge. Rick watched him go and, for the first time, didn't call him back. He turned back toward his own reflection, the one still waiting. "You're not real," Rick muttered. "You're just some light trick or emotional data scan." The reflection tilted its head, the exact way Rick used to when he was younger and curious. And then it did something Rick hadn't done in years. It laughed, not mockingly, just softly. The kind of laugh that makes the air feel lighter. Rick felt something inside him twist. Something too old to name, too fragile to hide behind sarcasm. He took a slow step forward until his fingertips nearly touched the surface. The reflection didn't vanish. It just smiled again. Morty's voice called out from the ridge. "Rick, you should see this." Rick sighed, pocketed his flask and trudged toward him. As he moved, the reflections in the glass shifted, not just of him and Morty, but of entire worlds they'd passed through. Planets they'd left behind, friends, enemies, faces that flickered like fading dreams. The air shimmered as he reached Morty's side. Together they looked out over the horizon. Below them stretched an ocean of light, each ripple holding a reflection of some version of them. Some old, some young, some laughing, some holding hands, some simply sitting quietly in the dark. It's like
all the things we could have been, Morty whispered. Rick said nothing.
His jaw tightened, but his eyes stayed fixed on the glowing sea. Morty turned to him. "What do you see, Rick?" Rick hesitated.
"I see a guy who wasted everything that mattered.
And somehow still got lucky enough to have one person who stuck around." Morty's breath caught, but he smiled softly. "That's not wasting it, Rick. That's what makes it worth something." For a long time, they just stood there. The mirror world glowed gently beneath their feet, reflecting infinite possibilities. None of them perfect, all of them peaceful. Rick finally exhaled, a sound somewhere between a sigh and a laugh. "Let's get out of here before I start writing poetry, Morty," Morty chuckled.
"Yeah, okay, but..."
"This place feels kinda nice, doesn't it?" Rick looked back one last time. His reflection was still there, still smiling. And for once, Rick didn't look away. "Yeah," he said quietly.
"It does." He raised the portal gun and fired.
The green vortex bloomed softly, its glow mixing with the planet's silver light. As they stepped through, the reflections waved, faintly, gently, like memories saying goodbye. And when the portal closed, the glass plains stilled again. holding only the silence of what could have been. The next portal opened not with a flash, but with a sigh, soft, tired, like the world itself exhaling. Rick and Morty stepped out onto the bank of a wide, slow-moving river that shimmered like liquid glass under a pale lavender sky. The air was still, heavy with the scent of something ancient. Not decay, but memory. The kind that lingers even after you've forgotten what it belonged to. The river stretched on forever, winding through a valley where the ground pulsed faintly with color, as if beneath the soil something luminous was breathing. The water glowed faintly from within, gold, blue, pink, like it carried light instead of reflecting it. Morty crouched near the edge, dipping his fingers in. Tiny ripples spread outward, and in them faint images appeared. Fragments of laughter, faces half seen, moments too fleeting to name. He pulled his hand back quickly. "Rick, what is this place?" Rick's voice was quieter than usual. The locals call it the river that remembers everything. Supposedly, every thought, every dream, every moment that ever existed, it all ends up here eventually. He flicked his wrist, pulling a small metal flask from his coat and tossing it into the river. The water rippled, shimmered, and then, softly, the sound of someone laughing came back. A familiar laugh. Rick froze.
Guess it works. Morty stared at the river, his reflection trembling on the surface.
"You mean this water remembers everything?"
Like every word we ever said?
Rick nodded, his tone almost wistful. "And everyone we didn't." They followed the riverbank for a long time, neither speaking. The only sound was the slow murmur of the current, and in that murmur were whispers. Voices, not quite real, but not gone either. Some were light, playful. Others carried weight, the weight of years, of choices.
Of things unsaid. Morty stopped and knelt again,
watching as a memory unfolded in the reflection. Him and Rick, younger, running through some collapsing alien city.
laughing like idiots. "I remember that," Morty said softly. "That was the time we almost died, and you said it didn't matter because almost dying was still technically living." Rick smirked faintly.
Classic line. Morty watched as the image faded into mist. "Do you think the river remembers the bad stuff too?" Rick kicked a small rock into the water. "Bad stuff's what it remembers best. People spend their lives trying to forget, but the universe doesn't. It just files it away somewhere quiet." They kept walking until they found a small boat tethered to a half-buried post. It looked old but untouched by decay, like it had been waiting for them. Without a word, Rick untied it and climbed in. Morty followed, settling into the seat opposite him. The current caught them immediately, pulling them downstream at a slow, deliberate pace. As they drifted, the sky shifted shades, from lavender to deep indigo, and the water began to glow brighter, as if the night made the memories stronger. The river hummed, and soon faint shapes appeared in the current. Silhouettes of people, moments replaying in silence beneath the surface. Morty leaned over the side, eyes wide.
"Rick, is that—"
Rick looked too. A small child and a woman were sitting together on the shore of some other time, building something out of junk metal. The child was laughing. The woman looked at him with pride. Rick's hand tightened on the edge of the boat. Morty whispered,
"Is that—"
"Yeah," Rick cut him off. "Don't ask." The vision dissolved, replaced by ripples of light. Morty didn't press further. He just watched Rick's expression, the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes softened for the briefest moment before hardening again. They drifted in silence. The river bent, winding through a field of glowing reeds. Every so often the current would carry fragments of voices, conversations half finished,
"Laughter without context, tears without names," Morty finally said. "You ever wish you could forget stuff, Rick?"
"Like really forget? Well, not just bury it?" Rick stared into the water. "If you forget the pain, you forget the reason you stopped touching fire. And if you forget the good stuff, You stop remembering why it was worth hurting in the first place. Morty frowned, thinking.
That's kind of sad. Rick shrugged.
It's balance. You remember enough to learn and you forget enough to sleep. The river widened. Ahead, the current split into dozens of smaller streams, each glowing with a different hue. Gold, violet, green, blue. They flowed off into the horizon like veins of light. Morty tilted his head. Where do they all go? Rick's voice was quiet.
Everywhere.
Some memories turn into stars.
Some become dreams, some just fade. He looked down at the water, his reflection splitting across the ripples.
The smart ones let go. Morty stared at his own reflection, then leaned closer until his lips almost touched the surface. What happens if you tell the river something new? Rick looked at him, eyebrow raised.
You mean like a confession?
Maybe. Morty hesitated, then whispered,
I'm glad I met you! The water rippled, shimmered, and for a heartbeat.
Morty saw two versions of himself reflected there, the one who said it and the one who never did. The first smiled faintly before vanishing into light. Rick watched, pretending not to care, but his voice came softer than usual.
You're such a sentimental little idiot, Morty smiled.
Guess it's contagious. The river began to slow, its glow dimming as they neared the next bend. Rick reached down, scooped up a handful of the water, and let it slip through his fingers. For a moment, as the droplets fell, they glowed, each one holding a face, a sound, a fleeting memory until they were gone. Forget me slow, Rick murmured. Morty looked up. What? Rick shook his head.
Nothing.
Just thinking out loud. The current eased to a stop near a quiet shore. They stepped out, the sand beneath their feet soft, cool, almost like silk. Behind them, the river kept flowing, carrying away their reflections, their echoes, their words. Morty turned one last time. Do you think the river remembers us now? Rick took out his flask, raised it toward the glowing water. It remembers everything, Morty, but if we're lucky, maybe it'll remember the quiet parts most. The wind stirred, carrying with it a faint whisper. Two voices laughing in unison before fading into the soft hum of the current. Rick looked at Morty. Come on, kid.
Time doesn't wait for rivers, and as they walked away,
the glow of the water followed them for a while, then slowly dimmed, like a memory choosing to rest. The next world opened like a sigh, a long, quiet exhale that smelled faintly of rain. Rick and Morty stepped out onto a plateau of soft grey stone. Above them stretched a sky unlike any other, vast, endless, and alive. Clouds drifted slowly, pulsing faintly as if breathing, and every so often the air itself whispered, not like wind, but like words spoken by something too large, too old to be seen. They stood there for a while, saying nothing. The silence wasn't empty. It was patient, as though the world was waiting for them to settle down before it began. Morty was the first to break it. Rick, where even are we? Rick squinted at the horizon. The clouds moved in slow spirals, luminous veins of light running through them. Dunno, Morty, some kind of atmospheric consciousness cluster.
There's no ground civilization, no cities, no sound except...
He trailed off because the air itself had answered. A soft hum rolled through the sky, rising and falling like a heartbeat. Morty frowned. Did the sky just talk? Rick tilted his head. Maybe, or maybe we're just losing our minds. Hard to tell the difference out here. They walked for a while, their footsteps echoing faintly against the stone. It wasn't cold or hot, just still. Every breath they took felt like they were inhaling silence itself. Morty found himself whispering without meaning to.
It's weird.
It's like the air's listening, Rick chuckled lightly. Maybe it is.
You ever think about how much sound just disappears?
All the talking, all the noise, all the things people say and forget 5 minutes later? Morty shrugged.
Yeah, I guess. Why?
Rick stopped walking. What if they don't really disappear, Morty? What if they just drift up here? As he said it, the sky shimmered faintly. The clouds gathered, forming slow, shifting shapes. Not quite words, not quite symbols. It looked like a sentence being written and erased at the same time. Morty's eyes widened. "Rick, I think it heard you." Rick looked up, amused but oddly calm. "Wouldn't be the weirdest thing I've seen." The hum grew softer, gentler, almost melodic.
A voice, if you could call it that, formed in the air.
It wasn't male or female. It sounded like 1,000 whispers woven together. "Every word ever spoken lingers somewhere," it said. "We are what remains when sound forgets who made it." Morty stepped back slightly. "Whoa, okay, that's creepy." Rick didn't move. His face had softened, eyes reflecting the pale blue glow from above. "So you're like a cloud of forgotten conversations?" "We are the breath of meaning," the sky replied. Sigh after the sentence, the quiet between what's said and what's heard. Morty blinked.
"So like
Twitter, but nice." Rick smirked faintly.
something like that." The sky pulsed again.
Tiny motes of light began to fall from the clouds. Not rain, but fragments of sound. Each one flickered, carrying with it faint echoes. Laughter, apologies, lullabies, promises. Morty caught one on his hand. It hummed softly, and he heard a faint voice, his own, younger, trembling.
"I just wanted to help, Rick." Morty froze.
"Wait, that's me.
"That's me from..."
From when we blew up the Cronenberg world." Rick looked at the fragment in his palm, his expression unreadable. "Looks like the sky's keeping receipts." The light faded from Morty's hand, leaving behind only warmth. "So, all the stuff we said, all the things we thought were gone, they're still here?"
"Yes," the voice murmured.
"And so were the things you didn't say." Rick's head tilted slightly. "Like what?" The air shimmered. A faint vibration surrounded them, and then, gently, almost tenderly, another voice spoke. It was his, younger, sharper, tired. "I didn't mean to leave." Rick's eyes narrowed.
That's not funny." The sky didn't respond.
The light around them dimmed, growing softer. Morty watched, not sure whether to say something or stay silent. Rick sighed, his tone rough around the edges. "You can dig up every sound in the multiverse, and you still can't change the fact that once something's said, it's already over." "Not over," the voice whispered. "Remembered." For a moment, the entire sky glowed. Thousands of faint lights swirling together, forming patterns that resembled faces, silhouettes, echoes. The air felt thick with emotion, like the memory of a storm that never came. Morty sat down on the stone floor, hugging his knees.
"It's kind of nice, though," he said quietly.
Knowing all the stuff we said, even the bad stuff, it didn't just disappear. Rick stared at the horizon, his reflection caught in the shimmer of the clouds. "Yeah, it's nice until you remember how much of it you wish you could take back." Morty looked at him.
"You mean like when you yelled at me?"
Rick half smiled. "Or when I didn't." The hum in the air deepened, turning slow and resonant, like a heartbeat echoing across miles of sky. The voice spoke again, softer now. "You cannot unmake the sound, but you can learn its shape." Rick raised an eyebrow. "Its shape? The way a word bends," said the voice, "is the way a soul learns to listen." Morty frowned.
"That's actually kind of beautiful," Rick chuckled. "Don't get used to it."
"The universe has a weird sense of poetry." They sat there for a long time. Rick cross-legged, Morty leaning back on his elbows, staring up at the drifting clouds as faint whispers passed overhead. Some of the voices laughed.
Some cried.
Some were just breathing, Morty asked softly. "Do you think it remembers everything we ever said to each other?" Rick looked at him.
"I hope not."
"That'd be a lot of sarcasm and bad ideas," Morty grinned, sleepy and warm. "Yeah, but also a lot of good stuff too." Rick didn't answer right away. His eyes were half closed now, gaze fixed on the faint shimmer above. The air moved gently, wrapping around them like a blanket. Somewhere far in the distance,
Thunder murmured. Not loud.
not sharp, just a low, contented growl, like the world clearing its throat before bed. Rick leaned back against the stone, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe that's what it means to face yourself. Listening to what you've already said, Morty yawned, eyes heavy.
Do you think the sky ever gets tired of listening?
Rick smirked faintly. If it does, it probably just pretends to understand like everyone else. The air shimmered, and a final phrase drifted down from above, gentle as a lullaby. The ones who listen are never alone, Morty smiled, eyes closing.
That's nice. Rick watched him drift off, then looked back at the sky.
The clouds pulsed one last time, then began to fade into soft indigo. Yeah, Rick murmured.
That's real nice. He closed his eyes.
And for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like someone was listening. The portal shimmered open into stillness. No hum of neon cities.
No mechanical wind. No life stirring.
Just quiet. So thick it pressed gently against their eardrums, like cotton wrapped around sound itself. Rick and Morty stepped out into what looked like an old Earth town. Maybe from the 1950s. There were cobblestone streets, glowing lampposts, and a soft, amber haze floating in the air like the last hour before dawn. Every building was perfectly intact, yet not a soul moved. Curtains hung half-drawn. Coffee cups rested beside armchairs. Cars idled at intersections, headlights dimmed to a sleepy pulse. Morty swallowed.
Rick, where is everyone?
Rick didn't answer at first. He took out his scanner, the screen flickering faintly, then frowned. No life signs.
No deaths either. Just
Suspended consciousness, Morty blinked. Suspended? Like they're all asleep? Rick nodded slowly. Not asleep, Morty, frozen in a dream cycle. Whole town stuck in a shared REM field.
It's actually kind of beautiful. And horrifying.
They walked past a bakery, its sign gently swinging though there was no wind. Inside, a woman sat at a table, her head tilted slightly, eyes closed, a faint smile on her face. Beside her was a steaming cup of coffee that never cooled, tendrils of vapor endlessly curling toward the ceiling. "Holy crap," Morty whispered. "She's dreaming right now?" Rick studied the cup, its steam trapped in an eternal loop. Yeah, whatever happened here, time isn't passing in the usual way. Their brains are running, but the world isn't. They continued walking. Every few feet, they passed more sleepers. A man frozen mid-step, a mail carrier leaning against a post, a child asleep beside a bicycle, all with faint smiles, all breathing softly. The town had the unsettling peace of a bedtime story that never turned its last page. Morty tugged on Rick's sleeve.
So, what if they're happy?
I mean, maybe they're all having good dreams. Rick arched an eyebrow. That's what every tyrant of the subconscious says before breakfast, Morty. Don't wake them, they're happy. They turned a corner and came upon a small park. The swing set moved slowly, as though pushed by invisible hands. The sound of chains creaking was faint but steady, like a heartbeat in the fog. Fireflies drifted through the mist. Or maybe they weren't fireflies at all, but fragments of someone's dream.
Trying to remember what light looked like, Morty whispered. Rick?
This place feels like it's breathing. Rick looked around, expression unreadable. That's because it is. The air's saturated with collective neural energy. Their dreams have networked into something bigger than the people themselves.
Like one giant sleeping organism, Morty shivered.
So the town is alive? Rick smirked faintly. Alive, dreaming, or dead. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. They walked until they reached the town square. In the center stood an old clock tower, its hands frozen at 3:33, the hour of lucid dreaming. The silence here was so deep that Morty could hear his own heartbeat. Then, softly, a voice floated from nowhere.
Or everywhere. Please don't wake us, Morty jumped.
Rick, did you hear that? Rick was already scanning the air, his device flickering with spectral readings.
Yup, dream resonance field. They're talking through it. The voice spoke again, layered, like hundreds of people whispering through the same breath.
We are safe here. We remember warmth. We remember laughter. The waking world forgot us. Let us stay, Morty's brow furrowed.
But that's not living. They're just stuck.
Rick exhaled slowly. Maybe stuck is better than scared. He looked at one of the sleeping figures, a young man sitting on a bench holding a guitar. The man's fingers twitched faintly, plucking invisible strings. From nowhere, a faint melody drifted through the air, warm and nostalgic. Rick's face softened. This guy's been playing the same song for years, Morty, and he doesn't even know it. The melody wrapped around them like mist. Morty sat down beside the dreamer, staring at his still face. So what do we do? Wake them up? Rick hesitated. The light from the clock tower reflected in his eyes, soft and blue. If we wake them, they'll remember everything they were running from. Fear, loss, loneliness, maybe even the fact that the universe kept going without them. Morty frowned.
That's heavy, Rick gave a half smile.
Welcome to consciousness, Morty. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the endless dream song drifting from the air itself. Somewhere above, clouds parted, revealing a pale moon that hung too low, almost brushing the rooftops. The voice came again, this time softer, closer, as if spoken from inside their minds. Why do you wake if sleep feels kinder? Morty blinked. Because dreams aren't real. You can't live there forever. The voice sighed. It sounded almost human. You call this unreal, yet your world is filled with noise, fear, distance. Here, every heart beats in rhythm. Every memory stays warm. Rick leaned back against a lamppost, expression unreadable.
You're not wrong, he muttered.
But you're not free either. Freedom, the voice replied, is just another kind of noise. Morty looked at Rick, uncertain. So what do we do? Rick stared at the clock tower, its frozen hands glinting. We don't decide for them, Morty. Nobody gets to decide what peace looks like for someone else. He raised his portal gun, aiming it toward the sky. A faint hum filled the air. Then he stopped, lowered it. Instead, he reached into his coat, pulled out a small device and a recorder, and pressed a button. To Morty's surprise, a sound began to play, the faint hum of crickets, the rustle of wind, the quiet sound of life. Rick let it echo softly through the streets. If they're going to dream forever, he said quietly, at least let them dream of something real. The sound drifted across the town. Windows flickered. Lamps glowed a little brighter. The smiles on the sleepers' faces deepened slightly, as if the dream had heard something beautiful. For the first time since they'd arrived, the air felt lighter. The stillness wasn't empty anymore. It was restful. Morty whispered, "You think they know?" Rick looked at him, eyes softer than usual. Maybe they'll dream us passing by. They sat there for a long while, the dream song fading into the hum of night. Rick leaned back against the bench, staring at the unmoving clock. Sometimes, he said, half to himself, the best thing you can do for the world is not to wake it. Morty nodded, sleep tugging at the corners of his eyes. Yeah, maybe, as they opened the next portal. The town behind them shimmered like a mirage, a memory wrapped in silence, forever caught between dreaming and dawn. And, when the light swallowed them whole, the last sound that echoed through the empty streets was a whisper of gratitude. Thank you for letting us rest. The next portal opened like a sigh, soft, amber, and slow. Rick and Morty stepped through, not into another planet or city, but into a vast hall that breathed in silence. Books stretched endlessly in every direction. They rose higher than clouds, higher than stars. The air shimmered with golden dust that drifted like patient fireflies. Every shelf hummed, not with sound, but with memory. It was a library of everything that never happened, everything that might have been. Morty turned slowly, whispering, "Wow, this place feels alive." Rick ran a hand along one of the books. The cover was warm beneath his touch, like a heartbeat. "Yeah," he murmured. "It's made of what-ifs. This is the library between lives. Every choice that wasn't made, every life unlived, ends up here." They walked deeper inside, their footsteps echoing softly on marble that seemed to glow from beneath. The shelves didn't obey physics. Some curved into infinity, others folded inward like dreams remembering themselves. In the distance, Morty saw staircases that floated in mid-air, connecting one story to another like tangled thoughts. "Who builds something like this?" Morty asked quietly. Rick gave a small shrug. "Nobody builds it. It just happens. The universe hates waste, even when it comes to possibilities." As they moved through the aisles, the light changed, growing softer, dimmer, as though respecting the slumber of a trillion forgotten versions of existence. Occasionally, a book would slide itself from the shelf, hover in the air for a moment, then drift back as if sighing in its sleep. Morty stopped before one with his name on it. The spine read, "Mortimer Smith, the version who stayed home." His throat tightened.
"Rick, it's me." Rick glanced over but said nothing.
Morty hesitated before opening it. Inside, the pages glowed faintly. There were scenes of a life familiar yet strange. Morty sitting under the same oak tree every afternoon, older, calmer, a notebook always in hand. He wasn't saving universes or running through portals, just living, studying, laughing, loving. Morty turned another page and saw himself watching sunsets with someone. Her face was blurred, but her presence felt warm, safe. The air around the image shimmered with peace. He whispered, "He looks
happy." Rick's voice was low.
"Yeah, sometimes the versions that never left end up with better endings." Morty closed the book gently, his fingers trembling.
"You think I could have been him?"
Rick looked at him, really looked at him, then shook his head.
"You are him."
Somewhere in you that Morty still exists, just buried under the noise. They continued walking. Rick's expression grew unreadable, his eyes darting between shelves. His fingers brushed over dozens of spines, some labeled, some blank, some whispering, faintly when touched. Then one stopped him. It was small, worn, its leather cover faded by time. The title, etched in faint blue light, read, "The Man Who Couldn't Stop Building." Rick froze. Morty looked over.
"That yours?"
Rick's thumb traced the letters like a confession.
"Yeah, guess so." He opened it. Inside were blueprints.
Not of machines, but of moments. Every page was a diagram of something he had built and then abandoned. The portal gun, the citadel.
A version of his daughter he never stayed to raise. A universe that had once trusted him. Morty stood silently beside him,
watching Rick's jaw tighten. One page caught his eye. It showed a small garage filled with laughter. 2 chairs, side by side, and a glowing green portal half finished. At the bottom, written in Rick's handwriting, were the words, "He almost stayed." Morty whispered, "You almost did?" Rick didn't answer. He just stared at the drawing until the lines began to blur. After a long silence, Morty said softly, "You know,
maybe it's okay to stop building stuff.
You don't have to fix everything." Rick's laugh was quiet, brittle. "That's what people say right before everything breaks, Morty." They walked on. The deeper they went, the more surreal the library became. The books began to hum louder, their light pulsing in rhythm with unseen heartbeats. The aisles stretched into mirrors of themselves, an infinite recursion of might-have-beens. Eventually they came to a massive door at the far end of the hall. It wasn't made of wood or metal, but of pure starlight condensed into form. Across its surface was engraved a single phrase: "Every choice is a kind of forgiveness." Rick stared at it. His reflection shimmered across the light. "You ever think," he said slowly, "that maybe all the universes I made weren't about science?"
Maybe I was just trying to forgive myself over and over for not being enough. Morty looked up at him.
"You are enough," Rick chuckled, low and tired. "You don't mean that?" Morty shook his head.
No, Rick, I do. You've done messed up stuff, yeah, but
"You also kept showing up."
even when you didn't have to. For a long moment, Rick said nothing.
The air between them pulsed, like the pause between heartbeats. Then he reached out and pushed open the door. Inside was not another hall, but a single room, circular, filled with shelves that all faced inward. At the center stood a table, and on it, one book.
No title, just silence. Rick approached it slowly.
The air shimmered, carrying faint echoes, laughter, crying, whispers of old adventures. Morty recognized his own voice, younger and nervous, saying, "Geez, Rick, what's the worst that could happen?" Rick smiled faintly. "Everything," he murmured. He opened the final book. The pages were blank, pure white, glowing gently. Then, as he turned them, faint letters began to appear, as though remembering themselves. Words written in a hand Morty didn't recognize. It read, "This is the story of two wanderers, one who ran from everything, one who followed him anyway. And somewhere between universes they found a home." Morty swallowed hard.
Is that us?
Rick closed the book gently. "Guess the library thinks so." For a while, they just stood there, two tiny figures in an infinity of lost possibilities. Then Morty spoke, voice trembling but calm. "Rick, do you ever wonder if we're the best versions of us?" Rick smirked faintly, his eyes soft. "Nah, but maybe we're the ones still trying."
That's got to count for something. They turned to leave.
As the door shut behind them, the light dimmed, and a gentle wind stirred the pages. Somewhere deep in the shelves, the book with their story glowed faintly, like a nightlight left on for someone who might come back. Morty looked over his shoulder.
You think anyone reads these?
Rick exhaled slowly. "Maybe the universe does."
Maybe it dreams them when it gets lonely. They stepped back into the dim corridor, the sound of their footsteps echoing like the turning of slow pages.
The dust shimmered in the air, catching light from the fading portal ahead. Rick said quietly, "You know, Morty."
I used to think every decision I made broke something. Now I think maybe
"You just wrote something new." Morty smiled softly. "Yeah, maybe every mistake's just another story waiting to happen." Rick nodded, though his eyes were distant, like someone hearing music from another lifetime. Maybe, the portal gun hummed. Light expanded around them as they stepped through. The library exhaled, a sound like paper rustling, like memory turning to dream. And when the glow faded, the books returned to sleep, their quiet voices blending into one infinite whisper. We remember them, the ones who wandered, the ones who tried, the ones who built worlds just to forgive themselves. The portal opened without sound this time. No flash, no hum, no spark, just a slow blooming of gold and violet light that dissolved into a gentle horizon. Rick and Morty stepped through onto a landscape unlike any they had ever seen. The sky above was soft and endless, neither day nor night, a twilight that stretched in both directions forever. The air shimmered with faint motes of starlight, and beneath their feet lay a field of tall, silver grass that swayed though there was no wind. Each blade of grass glowed faintly at the tip, as if remembering sunlight, and scattered through the field were suns. Thousands of them. Small, glowing orbs of fire no bigger than lanterns.
Hovering just above the earth.
They pulsed faintly like hearts that had long since slowed. Some burned bright and proud, others flickered weakly, and a few lay dim and cold, their warmth gone, but their shape intact. Morty gasped softly.
Are those stars?
Rick nodded, his eyes reflecting 1,000 dying lights. Yeah, the ones that burned out before anyone noticed. This place is where forgotten stars come to rest. They began to walk. The ground beneath them was soft, as though they were stepping on clouds. A low hum filled the air. Not quite music, not quite silence, somewhere between the two. The suns swayed gently as they passed, responding to their movement like old friends stirring in sleep. Morty bent down beside one of the dimmer lights. It's still warm. Rick crouched beside him, hands buried deep in his coat pockets. Everything that's ever shone still carries a little heat, even when no one's looking. Morty stared at it.
You think it knows it's gone out?
Rick gave a small, tired smile. Probably not.
Stars don't die the way we think. They just stop being seen. The wind or something like it whispered through the grass.
A soft, rhythmic rustle like pages turning. The fields stretched forever, and everywhere they looked, tiny suns floated above the horizon like a memory refusing to fade. Morty said quietly, "It's kind of sad." Rick shrugged. "It's kind of beautiful too." They walked for a long time, their silhouettes trailing long shadows across the silver field. Somewhere in the distance, faint constellations blinked, not above them, but beneath the horizon, like reflections of forgotten skies. After a while, Morty asked, "So what happens to stars like these? Do they ever
come back?"
Rick glanced at the dim orbs around them. Some do. Some get reborn as new light somewhere else.
Most just fade. But that's not really death, Morty. That's just rest. He paused, gazing at a cluster of suns huddled close together, glowing like campfires.
Even the universe gets tired sometimes. They sat down beside one of those little clusters. The suns buzzed faintly, vibrating like living creatures. Rick pulled out a flask, took a quiet sip, then handed it to Morty. Morty looked hesitant.
"You sure?"
Rick nodded. "It's just tea. Multiversal chamomile. Helps you think slower." Morty took a sip and laughed softly.
"Kinda tastes like space dust," Rick smirked.
"That's the aftertaste of creation." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of the field. The stars around them pulsed gently, illuminating Rick's face, tired, lined, but somehow peaceful. Morty turned to him. "You ever think about
all the universes we've been to? How many worlds we've left behind?"
Rick let out a long breath.
"Every damn day." Morty stared at his reflection in one of the suns.
"You ever wonder if we made things worse? Or better?" Rick's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite regret.
"I used to think I could measure that."
"Now I think maybe it doesn't matter. The universe doesn't keep score. It just keeps going." He leaned back on his elbows, looking up at the half sky, half dream above them. "But yeah, sometimes I wonder." Morty plucked a blade of glowing grass and twirled it between his fingers. The light flickered and dimmed, like a heartbeat slowing down. "Hey, Rick," he said softly. "Do stars die alone?" Rick was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Only if they forget they're made of light." The words lingered in the air, soft, heavy, and final. Morty looked down at the small sun beside him, then up at the faint shimmer in Rick's eyes. "That's
kinda beautiful," Morty said. Rick shrugged.
"It's physics, and maybe a little poetry." They both laughed quietly. The sound felt strange here, gentle, like something the universe hadn't heard in a while. As they continued walking, the field began to change. The suns around them started to rise, slowly, gently, as though recognizing the presence of someone who remembered them. One by one, they drifted upward, lifting into the sky. Morty's eyes widened.
"Rick, look!"
Rick looked up. The heavens were filling. Tiny sparks blooming into constellations again, reshaping themselves into patterns they'd long forgotten. "It's like they're waking up," Morty whispered. Rick nodded.
Yeah, maybe they just needed to be seen. The air grew warmer.
The silver grass shimmered gold now, the field breathing softly beneath them. The stars, those once forgotten suns, began to spin slowly in the air, orbiting each other in lazy harmony. It was as if the universe itself was remembering an old song. Rick took a step forward, looking up at the spectacle. "You know," he murmured, "the first time I created a star, I thought I was making something new. Turns out you can't really create light. You can only pass it along." Morty watched him silently, eyes glimmering. "You think that's what we've been doing all this time?"
Passing it along?
Rick smirked faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe we've just been too stubborn to stop wandering." They reached the heart of the field at a great sun, far larger than the others, glowing faintly blue. It was cracked down the middle, pulsing weakly. The light spilled through its fracture like liquid memory. Rick knelt beside it, pressing a hand to its surface.
"This one's old," he whispered.
"Older than time? Probably burned itself out trying to light the way for everyone else." Morty crouched beside him.
"Can we fix it?"
Rick shook his head.
"Doesn't need fixing."
"Just needs someone to remember it existed." They sat beside the dying sun. For a long while they said nothing, just breathing, watching, listening to the faint hum of a universe sighing itself to sleep. Finally, Rick spoke, voice barely audible. "You ever notice how quiet it gets when something's truly at peace?" Morty nodded slowly. "Yeah, feels
sacred," Rick smiled faintly.
Maybe peace isn't silence. Maybe it's just the sound of nothing left to prove." Morty leaned back, resting his head on the glowing grass. "Guess that's what dying stars feel like." Rick chuckled softly. "Guess that's what living feels like, too." Above them, the sky rippled, hundreds of suns now fully awake, glowing softly, filling the horizon with gentle gold. It wasn't blinding, wasn't loud, just warm. The kind of light that didn't demand attention. It simply existed. Morty whispered, "It's beautiful." Rick nodded. "Yeah, the universe doesn't end with an explosion, Morty. It ends like this, with light remembering where it came from." The stars drifted higher. The great cracked sun before them glowed brighter for a moment. One last pulse, one last heartbeat, then faded, its fragments scattering into shimmering dust. Morty's eyes watered.
"It's gone."
Rick looked at the drifting particles and whispered, "No, it's everywhere now." The dust spiraled upward, joining the others, painting slow trails of gold across the twilight sky. The air shimmered with warmth, the hum deepening into something that felt like a lullaby. Rick and Morty stood there, side by side, watching until the last spark disappeared into the horizon. Morty said softly, "Hey Rick, do you think one day we'll be like that too?" Rick smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the fading glow. "We already are, Morty, little lights pretending we're not." They turned back toward the portal, the grass whispering against their legs. The light behind them dimmed slowly like a curtain closing on an old play. Before stepping through, Morty looked over his shoulder one last time. The field was still, peaceful, shimmering faintly under a sky that finally remembered its stars. Rick said quietly,
"Let's go, kid." As they stepped into the glow,
the portal folded shut behind them, and the field of forgotten sun settled once more into silence, its light pulsing gently beneath the eternal twilight. And somewhere, in the hush between worlds, a voice, faint as starlight, whispered, "Nothing that shines is ever truly lost." The portal closed behind them with a soft sigh, leaving Rick and Morty standing beneath a sky that didn't move. It was neither dawn nor dusk nor anything that could be measured by clocks or calendars. Time here had slowed, stretched thin and quiet, like a melody lingering after the music had ended. Planets floated lazily in the distance, orbiting each other in slow, measured arcs, and the light of distant stars shimmered without hurry. Drifting across the horizon like the slowest breath, Morty blinked, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him. Rick!
It's so
Quiet. Everything feels like it's floating. Rick tilted his head, squinting at the soft, blurred edges of reality. Yeah, kid. It's a pocket universe where time forgot to keep ticking. You can feel it, huh? The world just pauses. Morty stepped forward carefully, letting his fingers brush the surface of a drifting rock that rotated gently in the air. It felt warm and solid, but moved as if it had nowhere to be. He reached out to touch another, smaller planet spinning close by. The sensation was surreal, like holding a memory in your hands, familiar but untouchable, solid yet ephemeral. Rick knelt, eyes scanning the slow, eternal sky. Everything out here moves to its own rhythm, Morty. No rush, no deadlines, no ticking clocks.
even the light itself doesn't care. They wandered slowly along a floating path of shimmering cosmic dust that served as a sort of bridge between the drifting celestial bodies.
With every step, Morty felt the unusual weightlessness of time pressing softly against his chest. Each heartbeat stretched, lingering longer than it should, and he felt himself exhaling moments that had long been trapped in hurried universes. Rick sat down on the edge of a drifting moon, legs dangling into the void. Morty joined him, letting the slow pulse of the universe seep into his bones. A faint hum vibrated through the air, a frequency that wasn't sound exactly, but something deeper, resonating with the rhythm of existence itself. Morty closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. "Ever notice how quiet it gets when everything slows down?" Rick asked softly, gazing at a planet spinning in reverse in the distance. Morty nodded.
It's like...
"The universe is sleeping," Rick chuckled faintly. "Yeah, except it's not sleeping like we do. It's more like resting, letting itself drift for a while without worry. It's kind of what I've been avoiding all my life, Morty, and not letting myself rest." Morty turned to him, curious. "You rest?" Rick smiled faintly, not the usual smirk, but something soft, almost vulnerable.
I pretend to, kid. I tinker, I run, I fix.
"But really, I never let myself just be still."
That's why we're here, isn't it?
Morty considered this.
To be still?
Rick nodded. "To remember what it feels like not to chase everything at once, to see what's left when the noise stops." They drifted in silence, letting the hum of sleeping time wrap around them like a blanket. The stars above weren't fixed. They moved imperceptibly, tracing slow, deliberate arcs across the sky, pulsing softly, as if breathing. Morty traced a finger in the air, following one tiny spark, watching it curl and spiral, suspended in mid-motion for an eternity. "This is..."
Kinda perfect, Morty whispered.
No one yelling, no exploding planets, no deadlines, just space.
And time, and us, Rick chuckled softly. I've chased universes like a madman, Morty, always looking for something faster, bigger, brighter.
But sometimes, the slowest moments teach you the most. Morty leaned back on the moon's surface, letting the weightless pull of the universe cradle him. "Do you think..."
We could live here forever.
Rick shook his head slowly, though his eyes didn't leave the drifting planets.
No, we couldn't. We're too used to moving, to fixing, to breaking.
But we can stay long enough to remember what it feels like not to run. A faint ripple passed through the floating dust beneath their feet, carrying with it the essence of forgotten moments, tiny fragments of laughter, small sighs, quiet apologies, and unsent letters. Morty watched them swirl, each particle glinting like a miniature universe, and realized that time here was not just still, but reflective. Every fragment was a memory, a story, a moment once lost. Rick reached out and plucked one from the air, letting it hover between his fingers. Look at this, Morty. A second once forgotten. A tiny flicker of light someone thought they lost forever.
Here, it waits. Patient, Morty whispered. It's beautiful, Rick nodded. Yeah, and it's quiet because it doesn't need to shout. It just exists. They wandered farther, following a gentle path formed by starlight dust and soft gravitational pulls.
Slowly, Morty began to notice small details. A planet rotating gently, casting shadows like gentle waves. A distant comet tracing an arc as if in a slow, endless dance. The faint glow of tiny suns flickering like candle flames. Every detail held a calmness, a deliberate patience that spoke louder than any explosion ever could. Morty plucked a glowing fragment of cosmic dust and let it rest on his palm. It hummed softly, vibrating in sync with the heartbeat of the universe.
I can feel
everything slowing down.
Even me, Rick smiled faintly, letting the quiet settle into him.
Good, that's the point. You're supposed to feel it. Let time tuck you in, Morty. Let it remind you you're okay. They eventually settled under the shadow of a massive frozen moon. Its surface was pockmarked with craters that glowed faintly in the ambient light. Morty leaned back, staring at the floating planets around them, tracing their slow, languid arcs across the sky. Rick joined him, quiet, letting the stillness speak. You know, Morty whispered after a long pause. I don't want to leave.
I feel safe here, Rick gave a soft sigh. Yeah, safety isn't about walls or weapons, Morty. It's about moments like this.
Spaces where time stops just enough for you to catch your breath. The hum of the universe deepened, carrying with it whispers of forgotten voices, soft echoes of lives once lived and moments once cherished. Morty felt himself sink deeper into the calm, the slow rhythm of sleeping time wrapping around him like a blanket of stars. Rick watched him, expression unreadable but gentle.
You know, kid,
sometimes the hardest part isn't fighting the universe. It's sitting still long enough to notice it. Morty smiled faintly, eyes half closed.
I think I'm noticing it now. Rick's hand rested lightly on Morty's shoulder.
Good. That's all that matters here.
Not what we've done, not what we've fixed, just
this. Quiet. Time. Breath. The planets around them drifted lazily, stars pulsing like faint heartbeats. The frozen moon cast gentle shadows over their resting forms. For a long while, nothing moved but the soft sway of the cosmos itself. Morty whispered, Hey, Rick! Do you think time ever
gets lonely?
Rick was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, Maybe. But that's why we're here, Morty. To keep it company for a while. To remind it that someone notices. They sat in silence after that, letting the stillness carry them. The universe was vast, infinite, and patient. Everything drifted in slow, deliberate motion. And for the first time in a long time, both Rick and Morty allowed themselves to drift with it. The hum of sleeping time wrapped around them like a lullaby, gentle and constant. Morty's eyes grew heavier, the quiet pulling him towards soft dreams. Rick watched him for a while, then let his own lids fall, listening to the universe breathe. Above, the planets and stars moved imperceptibly, their paths winding in slow arcs. Time had taken a nap, and they had taken one with it, cradled in its gentle pause, and in that hush between moments, Rick whispered quietly, almost to himself, Sometimes slowing down is the bravest thing you can do, Morty murmured in reply, half asleep. Then I guess we're brave right now. The slow drift continued, the cosmic lullaby wrapping every floating fragment of light, planet, and memory into one soft, eternal exhale. The universe was at peace, and for the first time in all of their travels, so were they. Rick and Morty drifted slowly through the hushed corridors of this strange pocket of the multiverse. the air around them heavy with quiet and soft luminescence. Each step they took seemed to echo in slow motion, as if the universe itself was pausing to listen. The floor beneath their feet glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with their own breaths, and distant stars shimmered through invisible walls, winking softly like old friends acknowledging their presence. Everything was familiar, yet impossibly strange. A memory half remembered, a dream caught between awakenings. Morty walked a few paces behind Rick, watching the elder scientist's hands hover over the controls of a floating, silent console. "Rick?" Morty's voice was soft, careful not to disturb the gentle rhythm of this place. "Do you have to open every door?" Rick didn't answer immediately. He paused, looking ahead at a portal suspended in the distance.
Its frame was old, scratched, and the soft hum it emitted felt almost alive.
The light spilling from it was faint, a mix of amber and soft violet, as if the portal itself was breathing. Rick's fingers hovered just above the threshold.
"Not every door, Morty."
"But some doors," he trailed off, letting the silence speak. "Some doors want to be left unopened for a while." Morty stepped closer, curiosity mixing with a sense of reverence. "But why this one, Rick? Why is it different?" Rick finally turned, his expression quieter than Morty had seen in a long time. No sarcasm, no smirk, just a soft, reflective calm. "Because, kid, this isn't about fixing something.
It's not about saving anyone. This door...
It's about understanding what it means to just be. And maybe, just maybe, we're not ready to be that yet." Morty nodded slowly, letting his eyes wander over the soft glow of the portal. It wasn't menacing, nor was it threatening. It simply existed, humming with a quiet patience that demanded attention without demanding action. Morty realized that the real weight of the multiverse wasn't in the chaos they usually chased, but in the quiet spaces they rarely visited. The places where nothing moved but thought, reflection, and feeling. Rick stepped forward, placing a hand on the shimmering frame. He didn't reach to open it, only rested his palm lightly against the cool surface. A ripple of energy spread from the portal, washing over both of them like a slow tide. Morty shivered, not from cold, but from the gentle enormity of the moment. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Rick nodded, his eyes tracing the contours of the door, its soft light reflecting in the faint lines of his face. "Yeah, it is. And that's the thing, Morty. Sometimes the most important things are beautiful and quiet and
patient. They don't shout at you. They don't demand attention. They just..."
Wait. They stood together, the stillness around them stretching, expanding, folding into a quiet meditation. Morty could hear the faint hum of every portal they had ever opened, every choice they had ever made, echoing softly beneath the surface of the multiverse. Each hum was gentle, like a lullaby for lost moments, for time they had spent running and fixing and fighting. And now, here, in front of this final door, all of it slowed down. Morty crouched slightly, resting his chin on his knees. "So, we don't open it?" Rick shook his head slowly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Not today, Morty. Some doors are reminders. Some doors are patience. We don't need to cross every threshold to know what lies beyond.
Sometimes
Knowing that it's there is enough." Morty let out a soft sigh, feeling the weight of understanding settle gently over him. For the first time he felt a sense of completeness that had nothing to do with adventure, danger, or discovery. It was a calm, deep-rooted peace, the kind that comes from letting go, from acknowledging that some mysteries are meant to be held in quiet reverence. Rick crouched beside him, gazing at the door with a mix of nostalgia and soft pride. "You see, Morty, life isn't just about moving forward. It's about noticing, feeling, and sometimes just being still."
That's the hardest part.
"That's the part I've always tried to avoid. But standing here with you, I get it a little more." Morty smiled faintly, eyes tracing the soft glow of the portal.
I think I get it too, Rick. Sometimes not doing something is okay. Sometimes
Waiting is okay. They sat together on the edge of the glowing corridor, letting the quiet hum of the portal fill the space around them. The stars beyond shimmered, reflecting softly on their faces, while distant planets drifted lazily in a rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of the universe itself. Morty felt the gentle pull of sleep, the universe wrapping him in a soft embrace of stillness, teaching him the delicate patience of being present. Rick leaned back, letting the soft gravity of the moment settle him.
You know, Morty, all these doors we've opened, all these adventures, all the chaos.
Maybe the real lesson was waiting for us here. Quiet, patient, unassuming.
Not flashy, not loud, just...
He trailed off, letting the pause stretch like a soft cord. Just here. Morty closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the calm of the multiverse drift over him like a soft blanket. Yeah, just here, he echoed. The portal remained unopened, a quiet sentinel at the edge of infinite possibilities. And in that silence, Rick and Morty found a gentle reassurance. Some thresholds are meant to be left as they are, not conquered, not explored, only acknowledged with soft attention and quiet heart. They stayed a long while, watching the slow drift of stars and planets, letting the gentle hum of the multiverse settle over them. It wasn't an ending of action or adventure, but an ending of understanding, a quiet, meditative closure that allowed them to simply be. Morty leaned against Rick's shoulder, feeling the warmth and steadiness beneath him.
I like it here, he whispered, voice soft and half asleep. Rick's arm draped lightly around him, an unspoken promise of presence and patience.
Me too, Morty. Me too. The last door remained closed, glowing softly, humming quietly. A reminder that not every mystery needed solving, and for once, that was more than enough. In the gentle pause between heartbeats and star pulses, Morty let himself drift, letting the slow embrace of the multiverse lull him toward a sleep he had never known could feel so safe. Rick remained awake just a little longer, watching, listening, allowing the quiet to do its work. The corridors of light and soft energy stretched on around them, infinite and patient. The hum of existence wrapped them in a soft, eternal lullaby, and in that hush, both Rick and Morty discovered the profound peace of leaving some doors unopened, letting the universe and themselves rest. Rick and Morty stepped slowly through a corridor of soft, diffused light, the air around them carrying a subtle warmth that seemed to hum like a quiet memory. This part of the multiverse was different, slower, gentler, as if time itself had softened its edges to cradle those who wandered here. Alternate versions of themselves appeared intermittently, fading in and out like wisps of smoke, each one radiating contentment and calm. Morty noticed an older version of himself seated on a luminous bench, quietly reading a book whose pages glowed with soft golden light. The smile on that future Morty's face was serene, unburdened by the anxieties of youth, a face that mirrored the promise of patience and acceptance. Rick's eyes lingered on an older version of himself, standing by a glowing doorway. This Rick did not carry the usual weight of guilt or reckless energy. Instead, he radiated quiet understanding. "You did your best," the older Rick said simply, his voice like a soft echo of distant thunder, softened by clouds. Rick blinked slowly, the words settling into him like sunlight through a morning window. There was no reprimand,
no judgment, only a gentle acknowledgement of all he had tried, all he had failed to do,
and all he had quietly achieved without noticing. Morty felt a lump rise in his throat, not from fear or grief, but from the profound tenderness of the moment. He stepped closer to the older version of himself, noticing the soft twinkle in his eyes, a reflection of infinite patience and quiet forgiveness. "There."
Happy, Morty whispered, voice barely audible in the hush of the corridor.
The elder Morty simply nodded, tapping the glowing book with a hand that felt both light and reassuring. Every choice, every mistake, every little act, it all matters, even if it seems small. Rick's gaze shifted, taking in the other alternate Ricks that appeared intermittently. Some were tinkering gently with inventions, others simply resting against soft beams of light. None of them spoke loudly. None demanded attention. Their presence alone was enough, a meditation in motion. Rick realized that he had spent so much of his life fleeing, fighting, creating, that he had never truly paused to witness the quiet culmination of all his efforts. Now, standing among these spectral versions of himself, he understood the soft power of patience and gentle reflection. Morty reached out, taking Rick's hand lightly.
"I think I understand now," he said.
"It's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up, being present."
"Even if it's just for a moment." Rick's hand squeezed his gently, a silent affirmation that he understood too.
"You're learning fast, Morty," Rick murmured, voice softer than usual. "Maybe faster than I ever did." They continued through the corridor, the glowing versions of themselves fading gradually, leaving behind a warmth that lingered like a fading scent of memory. Morty's eyes took in the soft shapes of distant portals, each humming quietly, each carrying possibilities that would never need to be realized. The space was filled with echoes, not of loss, but of acknowledgement, of moments remembered and lessons gently absorbed. At one point, Morty paused, gazing at a reflection in a wall of gentle, undulating light. He saw himself as a child again, clutching Rick's hand during adventures that had felt chaotic and frightening. That version of himself looked up with trust and wonder, eyes soft and bright. Morty felt an unexpected warmth in his chest, a recognition that every moment of fear and excitement had contributed to this calm, reflective present. Rick moved beside him, observing quietly, allowing Morty the space to feel, to breathe. He too saw himself, younger, restless, reckless, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. The realization settled in him slowly. Every experiment, every interdimensional chase, every reckless decision had been part of a pattern that led here, to this corridor of quiet understanding, where echoes of goodbye were not sorrowful, but luminous. Morty bent down to touch the glowing floor, feeling the energy pulse beneath his fingertips like the heartbeat of the multiverse itself.
"They're all..."
"Okay," he said softly.
"Every version of us, even the ones who messed up." Rick nodded, taking a slow, deep breath, the hum of the space filling him with a rare stillness.
"Yeah, they're okay. And so are we, Morty. We're okay." The corridor stretched endlessly, filled with the soft glimmer of every possible choice they had ever made, the echoes of conversations, laughter, mistakes, and quiet victories. Morty felt tears prick his eyes, not from sadness, but from a gentle awe. It was as if the multiverse itself was exhaling, offering them this moment of calm reflection before the vastness of infinite possibilities resumed its gentle rhythm. Rick stopped beside a particularly soft glow, where a version of himself lingered near a portal that seemed to hum with unfinished experiments. He looked back at Morty and whispered, "Sometimes the hardest part isn't building or fixing or running. It's letting go, letting the echoes settle and knowing it's enough." Morty leaned into him, voice barely a whisper.
"I think
I can let go now." They walked hand in hand a little further, letting the corridor of soft echoes envelop them, carrying them through a gentle meditation on all that had been and all that remained. Each fading version of themselves left behind a trace of calm, a reminder that closure wasn't dramatic. It was a whisper, a quiet understanding that life in all its chaotic beauty, had brought them here to this rare, tender pause. And as they came to the end of the corridor, Morty and Rick paused together, breathing in the soft luminescence, letting the echoes of goodbye settle over them like a slow, comforting tide. It was not an ending, not a final resolution, but a profound recognition that they had arrived, not at a destination, but at a gentle understanding of themselves, their journey,
and the quiet strength of presence. In the hush of the corridor, Morty finally exhaled fully,
feeling the weight of countless choices dissolve into the gentle glow around them. Rick placed a hand on his shoulder, offering a rare, unspoken reassurance. Together they let the echo of goodbye linger, soft and luminous, carrying with it the peace of acceptance and the quiet beauty of infinite possibilities held lightly. Without urgency, without demand, the stars beyond shimmered faintly, distant and patient, echoing the quiet of this multiverse. Rick and Morty remained in the soft light a while longer, allowing the gentle reflection to permeate their beings. For once, the journey wasn't about doors or portals or outcomes. It was about being, fully and calmly, in the stillness of all that had been. Rick and Morty drifted further along the quiet edges of the multiverse, where the cosmos seemed to fold gently in on itself, slowing to a pace that felt like inhaling and exhaling through the softest possible rhythm. Here, the energy of every world they had visited, every choice ever made, pulsed like a soft, distant heartbeat. The light around them shimmered in subtle waves, not bright or harsh, but warm, comforting and almost alive. Morty glanced up, noticing how the stars leaned closer, almost to listen, to watch their journey of quiet discovery. He felt a peace settle over him, the kind that comes from knowing that some truths do not need to be spoken, only felt. Rick stopped beside a faintly glowing pool, its surface smooth like glass. The pool reflected not only their images, but soft, radiant echoes of moments long past, experiments, laughter, quiet arguments, and rare, fleeting smiles. Rick bent low, tracing his fingers across the liquid light. Each ripple carried a memory, a choice, a fragment of existence he had never paused to consider. Morty watched silently, sensing that for Rick this was more than reflection. It was recognition. Rick had spent lifetimes running, creating, chasing answers in the chaos of the universe, yet here, in this stillness, he began to see that the light he sought was always a part of him. Morty stepped closer, letting his hand hover over the shimmering surface.
"It feels like everything's slowing down just to breathe," he whispered.
Rick didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the subtle warmth of the multiverse settle into his bones. The hum of distant worlds, the soft pulse of unseen stars, and the gentle resonance of their own hearts combined into a lullaby of quiet understanding. For the first time in a long time, Rick allowed himself to rest, not out of fatigue, but out of choice, a conscious letting go of the constant need to fix, escape, or control. Morty noticed that the light itself seemed to respond. Gentle glows pulsed along the edges of floating islands, softly illuminating the endless pathways stretching into infinity. Each pulse was synchronized with the slow rise and fall of their breathing, as though the universe had leaned in to match their pace. Morty felt the weight of countless possibilities dissolve into this calm, realizing that sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that do not demand recognition, only acceptance.
"You're really letting go, aren't you?"
he asked softly. Rick opened one eye and gave a faint nod, a rare, unforced smile tracing across his face. The two of them walked along a path of softly glowing light, steps echoing gently into the vast stillness. Morty glanced around at the slowly shifting colors, each hue a reminder of universes both lived and unlived.
I think this is what we were running toward all along, Morty murmured.
Not answers.
Not adventures, just...
This. Rick's smile deepened slightly.
Yeah, he said quietly. Just this, and it's enough. As they moved, they passed floating remnants of their past. Fragments of inventions, tiny glowing memories of fleeting connections, and echoes of their laughter scattered across the expanse.
Nothing was urgent here. Nothing demanded attention. Each piece of their history was present, acknowledged, but held with gentle care rather than scrutiny or need. Morty felt a rare warmth in his chest, the kind that comes from witnessing someone finally finding the quiet they've been avoiding for lifetimes. Rick finally stopped at the edge of a softly luminescent cliff, overlooking a river of light that stretched endlessly into the horizon. The water below reflected every shade of existence they had ever known: joy, sorrow, mistakes, triumphs, blending into a seamless whole of quiet, radiant understanding. He turned to Morty, his voice barely more than a whisper.
Everything we did, every chaos, every screw-up,
it's all here.
And somehow, it's enough. It's always been enough. Morty nodded, his eyes wide with gentle awe.
He could feel the weight of their experiences settle into a comforting rhythm, as though the universe itself had learned to exhale alongside them. They sat together at the cliff's edge, legs dangling above the glowing river. The light wrapped around them, warm and soft, without need for commentary or judgment. Morty rested his head lightly against Rick's shoulder, feeling the quiet presence of someone who had lived lifetimes, but was finally learning the art of stillness.
I think I understand now, Morty whispered. All the running, all the chaos.
It was just practice for moments like this. Rick's hand found Morty's and gave a gentle squeeze. Yeah, kid.
Practice for this?
Time here felt different. Not stagnant, but gently slowed, stretching the space between moments into a canvas of reflection. The multiverse, in its vastness, leaned close, letting the light pulse around them like a lullaby meant only for those who had earned the patience to stop and listen. Morty watched as the soft radiance moved over Rick's face, noticing a rare serenity, a calm that had seemed impossible in the chaos of their usual existence. It was quiet, meditative, and utterly beautiful. The river of light rippled beneath them, carrying the echoes of every life, every adventure, and every choice forward into the gentle infinity. Rick leaned back, allowing the glow to wash over him, feeling the burden of endless worlds ease from his shoulders. Morty let out a slow sigh, a mirror of relief and understanding. We don't have to do anything else, Morty said softly.
We can just
be. Rick's lips curved in a faint, contented smile. We finally can, he whispered. As they sat together, enveloped in the gentle luminescence, the stars above began to pulse in tandem with the river, a cosmic sigh that seemed to affirm the peace settling between them. Morty closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the moment, the slow rhythm of the multiverse guiding him into a space of quiet rest. Rick followed suit, allowing himself to sink into stillness, the tools of endless creation set aside for now, replaced by a profound calm he had not known he needed. In this space, nothing needed fixing.
No universe demanded attention.
There was only the shared quiet, the soft pulse of light, and the gentle recognition that every step, every mistake, every choice had led them to this perfect pause. The light, learning finally to rest alongside them, wrapped the two of them in a soft, encompassing embrace, a reminder that even infinite energy could slow, breathe, and simply be. The stars overhead shimmered faintly, reflecting in the river below, casting gentle patterns of gold and silver over Rick and Morty. Morty rested his head against Rick again, voice barely audible. "Thank you for being here." Rick's reply was a soft murmur.
Barely more than a sigh. Always, Morty. Always. Together, they sat,
letting the light carry them, teaching them to rest, teaching them that even the brightest forces in the universe could finally pause. The gentle glow around them pulsed slowly, softly, and the moment lingered, timeless, serene, and perfectly still. In the quiet of the multiverse's edge, Rick and Morty had learned what had eluded them for so long, the art of letting go, the gift of being present, and the light that could finally quietly rest. Rick and Morty wandered further into the gentle expanse at the edge of everything, where the cosmos seemed to fold in soft, endless waves, like a memory stretching through sleep. The air, if it could be called that, shimmered faintly, carrying a warmth that was not heat, but the feeling of belonging. Morty noticed that each step they took left traces of light, subtle echoes of their presence, lingering long enough to remind them that even fleeting moments could leave impressions in the fabric of reality. Rick walked beside him, quiet, hands tucked into his lab coat, observing the stillness around them as though he were seeing the universe for the first time without the need to fix it,
to challenge it or to escape from it. This place,
Morty murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. It feels like
home, but it's not any home I've known. Rick nodded slowly, his eyes tracing the horizon where soft clouds of energy rolled endlessly, tinted with pale hues of gold, violet, and deep indigo.
It's a beginning, Morty, and maybe an ending, he said gently, or maybe both. Some things don't need to be figured out. You just feel them. Morty looked up at him, noticing the rare softness in Rick's expression, the absence of his usual restlessness, the quiet acceptance that comes when someone finally stops running. They came upon a small, newborn universe floating gently like a bubble suspended in the stillness. It was tender, fragile, and luminously quiet. Tiny specks of light drifted lazily within it, each one glowing softly, and the ground beneath their feet, if the term applied, hummed faintly with the rhythm of something breathing for the first time. Morty knelt down, letting his fingers hover above the soft energy, feeling the pulse of beginnings, endings, and everything in between. Rick remained nearby, watching him, leaning slightly on a softly glowing pillar that had formed naturally from the universe's nascent light. The two of them felt a quiet communion with this space, as though it recognized them, welcomed them, and asked nothing in return. Morty's eyes wandered across the delicate landscape, gentle hills of luminescent mist, floating orbs that whispered echoes of faint laughter, streams of soft liquid light meandering slowly through the air. He noticed a sense of history here, though it had not yet happened. The universe was dreaming of the lives that would someday exist within it, the bonds that would form, the quiet, ordinary moments that would feel extraordinary simply because they were lived. Rick, Morty said softly, it's like the universe is remembering itself before it even began. Rick's gaze softened as he followed the trail of Morty's finger, observing a cluster of gentle, newborn stars blinking into existence. Yeah, kid, it's the quiet before the noise, the calm before the endless chaos.
And we're
part of it now, in a way maybe we always were. They walked through this serene expanse, each step leaving a gentle glow in their wake. Morty noticed that the further they went, the more he could feel the weight of every adventure they had lived, every misstep, every triumph, every quiet moment of care or regret, settle into the calm of this new universe. It was as though the cosmos itself had learned to absorb and cradle their experiences, letting them sink into a gentle rhythm that required nothing more than presence. Rick reached out and lightly brushed Morty's shoulder. You feel that? He asked. Morty nodded, letting a soft smile appear.
It's peace.
Real peace. Not the kind you fight for, but the kind you let arrive. Rick's eyes glimmered with something he seldom allowed himself to show. Relief, gratitude, and an unusual softness. They found a small, clear pool of light in the center of this quiet universe. It reflected not only their faces, but faint, shimmering visions of other lives they had touched. Friends, strangers, alternate versions of themselves. Morty kneeled beside it, tracing a gentle finger through the surface, watching the reflections ripple and rearrange themselves with the softest, almost musical hum.
"Do you think we could stay?" he whispered. "Here?"
Just for a while. Rick leaned down beside him, resting one hand lightly on the soft energy.
"I think we should."
We've spent lifetimes running. Maybe now it's time to rest, time to just be. Morty felt a warmth spread through his chest, a comforting pulse that matched the rhythm of the universe's heartbeat. They explored slowly, letting curiosity and gentle awe guide them. Tiny glowing plants swayed lazily, almost in sync with their footsteps. A soft breeze, or the impression of a breeze, carried whispers of memory. Laughter shared across galaxies, small moments of tenderness, quiet forgiveness, and moments of growth that had taken countless adventures to reach. Morty realized that this universe, though small and quiet, contained more wisdom than any they had ever chased. Here, beginnings and endings felt like the same thing, held together by light, presence, and the stillness that came from truly arriving. As the light of this tiny cosmos bathed them, Rick finally set down the last of his tools. Morty watched him, noting how relaxed his posture was, the faint curve of a smile, the absence of the usual nervous energy. It felt almost miraculous, as though the universe had offered them permission to pause, not out of surrender, but out of recognition that this moment, this quiet, was enough. Morty leaned into Rick again, the soft hum of the universe filling the space around them, echoing a lullaby that seemed older than time itself.
"I think
this is what we were always looking for," Morty murmured. Rick's voice was gentle, almost a whisper. Maybe? Or maybe it's what we were always meant to find when we finally stopped looking. They sat together, letting the newborn universe cradle them in its quiet glow. Stars pulsed gently above, the faintest whispers of light reflecting their journey, their growth, and their presence. Here, at the edge of everything, the vastness was not overwhelming. Instead, it was a lullaby, an embrace, a soft, eternal sigh. They rested beside the pool of light, watching it shimmer with tiny echoes of all that had been and all that might yet come. Morty felt a rare clarity. The cosmos, in all its infinite complexity, had offered them a moment of pure, uninterrupted peace. Rick's hand found Morty's, and together they let themselves sink into the quiet, allowing the universe's gentle pulse to guide their breathing, their thoughts, their very being. No words were needed, no explanations, just the soft, luminous understanding that they had arrived, finally, in a place where everything could simply be. The light around them deepened, shimmering in harmony with their slow, even breaths. Morty closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of this universe seep into his memory, a gentle imprint that would remain even as they eventually moved on. Rick's gaze softened, his usual sharpness replaced with serenity. They had wandered across countless worlds, faced unimaginable adventures, and yet it all led to this moment. Quiet, luminous, and full of the promise of rest. Together, they let the universe cradle them, a small, newborn cosmos reflecting the infinite tenderness of their shared journey. And in that quiet, they realized home was not a place, not a person, not a destination.
home was this. The calm pulse of light, the gentle echo of life, the slow exhale of the universe itself.
They did not need to go anywhere else. They did not need to fix anything. They only needed to be here, in the cradle of all that had been and all that could be. For the first time, Rick and Morty let themselves simply rest, and the universe, in turn, breathed alongside them. The first light of this small, quiet universe was not a blaze of brilliance, but a gentle stirring, like the soft exhale of a dream waking slowly from sleep. Rick and Morty stepped outside the tiny house they had built beside the glowing lake, the wooden planks warm beneath their feet. The warmth here was not the heat of fire, but the feeling of safety, of being exactly where one belonged. Morty took a deep breath of the soft, luminous air, watching the faint ripple of light across the water, noticing that even the smallest movements made the lake respond with subtle echoes of reflection, like the universe itself was speaking in a language of quiet reassurance. Rick hummed softly as he adjusted a small solar panel they had installed to capture the ambient glow from the newborn stars above. The sound was low and content, a rhythm that mirrored the gentle pulse of the world around them. Morty smiled at the hum, realizing it was not the tinkering of machinery, but the act of care itself that had meaning. He wandered down to the water's edge, letting his fingers skim the surface, sending ripples that glimmered with tiny sparks of light. Each ripple reminded him of every adventure they had ever undertaken. All the chaos, the laughter, the mistakes, and the lessons, now dissolving into something soft and enduring. Bird-like creatures, made of pure light, floated lazily above the lake, their movements slow and deliberate. Morty noticed that their patterns were not random. They traced arcs that mirrored memories, moments of childhood laughter, quiet tears, and whispered conversations across universes. He crouched to watch them, feeling a peculiar calm settle deeper in his chest, the kind of calm that comes when one finally understands that the smallest gestures and tiniest experiences are the ones that matter the most. Rick joined him, resting his hands on his knees, letting the ambient glow wash over him. His face, usually sharp with tension or curiosity, softened into something rarely seen: contentment, pure and unhurried. Morty pulled a small book from his satchel, one he had been reading for countless lifetimes, or perhaps only moments, and began to read aloud, his voice blending with the soft sounds of the universe. Rick leaned back against the house, listening, humming quietly at times to emphasize a line, laughing softly at the gentle humor tucked between the words. There was no urgency, no need to travel to another world, no unresolved crises. Here, they were neither hero nor wanderers, just two beings sharing the stillness of existence, letting the gentle rhythm of this universe seep into their bones. Time seemed to have taken on a new form here. Minutes stretched into soft, elongated moments, each one unbroken by distraction or obligation. Rick began to experiment lightly with a small telescope, pointing it toward the newborn stars just above them. Morty looked over his shoulder, noticing constellations he could almost recognize, familiar patterns from countless universes overlapping into new ones. He realized that even though the cosmos had always been vast and unknowable, this quiet universe allowed him to perceive it differently. Not as a chaotic expanse to be explored or controlled, but as a gentle presence to sit beside, to learn from, and to love without expectation. The lake reflected the faint morning glow, shimmering with colors that seemed borrowed from dreams themselves. Pale blues, soft purples, and gentle golds. Morty traced the reflection with his finger, letting the water pull his thoughts gently, like the slow current of memory. He remembered all the times he had been afraid, all the mistakes he had made, all the moments he had felt small in the grand universe. And yet here he felt enormous in a new way, immense in the simple act of being present, of being acknowledged, of being safe. Rick glanced at him and smiled faintly. And in that simple acknowledgement, Morty felt the culmination of everything they had lived through together. A small wind drifted over the glowing lake, carrying with it faint echoes of old songs and laughter, soft whispers of moments from forgotten universes. Morty closed his eyes, letting them settle over him, feeling that same pulse Rick had felt when they first discovered this place. The wind wrapped around them, a gentle cocoon, reminding them that even across infinite realities, even across endless chaos, there were spaces of stillness, moments of pause, and universes where it was possible to simply breathe. Rick finally rose and approached Morty, holding out a small cup of a warm drink that glowed faintly with the ambient light of the newborn stars. Morty accepted it, letting the warmth seep into his hands, into his chest. They sat together on the wooden deck, shoulders almost touching, sipping quietly. The lake reflected them in its shimmering surface, showing not just their present selves, but faint echoes of every version of Rick and Morty that had existed across countless adventures. None of the echoes moved hurriedly.
All seemed at peace, cradled in the quiet of this gentle morning. The sun,
or what passed for a sun here, rose lazily, casting pale, soothing light over the tiny house, the glowing lake and the universe beyond. Rick watched it, seeing not the mechanics of light and energy, but the subtle poetry of existence, of time allowed to move slowly without force. Morty tilted his head back, letting the light warm his face, feeling the soft pulse of a universe finally breathing in tandem with him.
"I think this is enough," Morty whispered.
Rick nodded, his eyes half closed, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, kid, this is more than enough." They spent the morning in quiet companionship, exploring the gentle nooks of their new home, listening to the soft hum of the lake, the faint whispers of light, and the slow, steady pulse of their own hearts, syncing with the rhythm of this universe. Morty noticed that the longer they stayed, the more the anxieties, the fears, and the rushing of past adventures melted into the gentle cadence of now. Each moment became a soft brushstroke on the canvas of their infinite journey, each silence a lullaby, each shared glance a poem of its own, as the light deepened, casting soft shadows over the tiny universe. Rick and Morty settled beside the glowing lake once more. Morty rested his head against Rick's shoulder, feeling the steady, calm warmth of the man who had guided him through chaos, and who now, in this quiet place, simply rested with him. Rick placed his hand over Morty's, holding it loosely but firmly, and together they let the universe envelop them in the gentle morning light. In that moment, neither needed to speak. Words would not have added anything. Quiet, the warmth, and the shared presence said everything that needed to be said. And in the hush of that newborn universe, as the glowing lake mirrored infinite skies and the soft morning light painted everything in gentle hues, Rick and Morty realized, for the first time in countless lifetimes, they were not chasing, fixing, or surviving. They were home, and home, in its most profound sense, was simply being together, sharing the quiet, and letting the world breathe around them. The universe, vast and infinite, had paused long enough for them to feel the fullness of peace. The stars above the tiny universe had returned, not in brilliance or urgency, but in a soft, patient glow, like the gentle blinking of eyes just waking from a long sleep. Rick and Morty stood on the wooden deck beside the glowing lake, watching the faint ripples reflect the cosmos above. The universe itself seemed to breathe with them, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that required no thought, no intervention, only presence. Morty yawned softly, the kind of slow, deep yawn that comes after a long, peaceful rest. Rick hummed a quiet note that mingled with the subtle sound of water lapping at the edge of the lake. Morty glanced at Rick, noticing the lines around his eyes softening. The tension of countless adventures finally dissipated.
You think this is the end?
Morty asked, his voice a whisper that barely disturbed the calm around them. Rick didn't answer immediately. He tilted his head toward the stars, as if weighing the meaning of all that had happened, then exhaled slowly.
Endings aren't what we think they are, Morty. They're just pauses.
Breaths between moments. Morty nodded, feeling the truth of that statement in the depth of his chest. The pause was long,
Infinite in its own quiet way, yet comforting.
as if the universe itself was tucking them into a soft, cosmic blanket. They walked slowly toward the edge of the lake, each step leaving a soft glow in their wake. The ground beneath them was warm, almost alive, responding gently to the presence of beings who had finally stopped running. Morty dipped his hand into the water, feeling the soft pulse of energy, the echoes of every adventure they had shared reflected back in the ripples. Rick stood beside him, silent, but his shoulders relaxed, his usually restless hands at ease. In this quiet, the weight of time and infinite universes seemed to dissolve, leaving only the present, luminous and gentle. A breeze drifted through the newborn universe, carrying faint whispers of past versions of themselves, laughter from universes long forgotten, gentle sighs of relief from worlds that had once been chaotic. Morty listened carefully, feeling the ebb and flow of countless memories, each one soft and distant, like a lullaby remembered in fragments. Rick placed his hand on Morty's shoulder, and for a moment, the boy felt the calm radiating from him as fully as he had ever felt in his life. The man who had taught him chaos now embodied stillness, and Morty understood that quiet had power, gentleness had weight, and love could be expressed simply through presence. The lake mirrored the stars perfectly, doubling the infinite light into a gentle, shimmering canopy beneath and above. Morty lay down on the soft grass at the edge of the water, his head resting on Rick's lap. Rick leaned back, letting the soft glow wash over them, eyes half closed. No words were necessary. The hum of the universe, the reflective ripples in the water, and the shared heartbeat between grandfather and grandson were enough. The silence spoke of forgiveness, of memories accepted, of moments fully felt and allowed to rest. Morty traced patterns in the water with his fingers, sending tiny waves out to meet the stars' reflections. Each wave seemed to respond, bending the light gently, creating arcs that shimmered and danced in slow motion. He remembered every choice, every misstep, every small kindness and cruel joke they had shared across countless universes. In this serene space, all of it coalesced not into regret, but into understanding. Rick's quiet presence, the calm of the universe, and the soft glow of the lake created a sense of safety that Morty hadn't realized he had been searching for all his life. Rick hummed again, this time a longer, more melodic note, syncing with the soft pulsing of the stars above. Morty closed his eyes, feeling the vibration through his chest, feeling the gentle warmth of Rick's hand over his own. It was not a heroic moment, not a climactic ending, but something rarer. The profound quiet of knowing that all their adventures, all the pain, all the laughter had led them here.
And here was enough.
Here was everything. A faint mist began to rise from the lake, carrying subtle scents of rain and starlight, memories of universes both chaotic and calm. Morty breathed it in, letting it fill his lungs, noticing the way the mist seemed to carry gentle stories with it. A half-remembered song from a long-lost adventure, a laugh shared in a forgotten city, the quiet apology Rick had never voiced aloud. Each memory merged with the present, softening the edges of time and space until only warmth, light, and gentle understanding remained. The sun, rising faintly on the other side of this newborn universe,
cast its light over them not as urgency, but as quiet acknowledgement.
Rick tilted his head, observing the delicate hues on the water, the reflections of stars, the shimmer of the mist. "We made it," he whispered, a rare vulnerability threading his voice. Morty nodded, sleepy but certain.
"Yeah, we did."
"We really did." They watched together as the light grew slowly, tenderly, illuminating the tiny house, the glowing lake, and the space around them. The universe felt suspended in this perfect, unhurried morning, where endings were not feared but embraced. Finally, Rick and Morty lay down on the soft grass beside the lake, side by side, watching the stars mirrored above and beneath them. Morty felt the slow, rhythmic heartbeat of the universe, the pulse of infinite realities tempered into a gentle lullaby. Rick's hand found his, once more a simple gesture of protection, love, and shared history. Neither moved, neither spoke, and neither needed to. The quiet stretched comfortably, endlessly filled with warmth, reflection, and acceptance. And as the soft glow of the stars and the faint morning light intertwined, Morty whispered, barely audible, "Thank you, Rick, for everything." Rick smiled faintly, eyes closed, allowing the soft energy of the universe to fill him fully. In that moment, no more portals, no more adventures, no more chaos mattered. Only the shared presence, the gentle stillness, and the quiet, unspoken understanding that for now, everything was enough. The universe, vast and infinite, had paused, and so had they, suspended in a perfect moment of calm, love, and eternal rest. Thanks for spending this time with us. Sleep well.
Everything's gonna be okay, man.